I'm just curious to see, how do you organize your Figma file?
Yeah, exactly. This is our file template that we're now using for all of our design work. This is actually a really nice component I created for it. I can quickly demo it for you, show the status. And here for the status bar that is applied here, you see exactly in which state this design is. So is it in progress? Is it in review? Is the design done? Is it ready for dev? Is it blocked for some reason, or is it shipped? So this is like a super nice bar here, and you can see also this meta information resemble here, so that you have the status, you have the designer who's working on it, so you can switch through, and then the date this feature has last been worked on. And this component is like super variable.
Hello, my designer friends. Welcome to Sneak Peek. And today we have Lukas, who's a lead product designer, and he's going to give us an in-depth look into Figma files for Study Smarter. Lukas, let's see your best sneak peek gesture.
Woo! Yeah. Thanks for having me, Jay. Awesome to be here and share my design.
I love it. We're already in it. I'm seeing your Figma file, and I'm just curious to see, how do you organize your Figma file?
Yeah, exactly. This is our file template that we're now using for all of our design work. It's quite new. We're still battle testing it. Previously, we had this really super simple structure of what most people have, that you have one Figma file per, let's say, ticket, or like one iteration of something you're working on. But we realized in our case, usually it makes more sense that we structure our files to be a little bigger, that it's actually like a section of our product. So that, for example, we say it is the assistant feature, or it is the task list. And for all of these features, there's actually multiple tickets within that. So what we now did is actually that we have a new structure, and this is like the file template we use for it, where you can see here the page layout on the side, where you see like one basic page layout for people to just get started. And it's laid out by, you have your section title. This is actually a really nice component I created for it. I can quickly demo it for you. So this is like a super useful component where you can just, give a name to the section. Let's say, okay, this is feature awesome, whatever. And if it's a small feature and it has just this one iteration, like there's not multiple steps to implementation, you could directly here show the status. And here for the status bar that is applied here, you see exactly in which state this design is. So is it in progress? Is it in review? Is the design done? Is it ready for dev? Is it blocked for some reason, or is it shipped? So this is like a super nice bar here, and you can see also this meta information resemble here, so that you have the status, you have the designer who's working on it. So we have a quite small design team at the moment, but for the 3 designers we also created like components here you can switch through, and then the dates this feature has last been worked on. And this component is like super variable. So if, say, this isn't just like this one iteration where I have this just my flow here right below it, but it actually consists of multiple steps to implementation, or multiple sub tickets, I would say. This would just be the header. And I would say
the color coding, I really love that. The way you color coded different project statuses, where the project is. Now, do you do this because you love the craft and you want to add that detail, or that color coding helps maybe the CEO or someone to get a very high level visual glance?
So it is actually, obviously I love my craft, but it's super functional, right? So if you really zoom out and there's a lot of things going on, a lot of features you're working on, you quickly can glance directly on that page which sections you actually have to look at. So if, say, everything is blue on that page, awesome, like nothing basically to look at, or you at least know this is the state of things. Like there's nothing that still has to be worked on, nothing to be reviewed or anything. This is just a source of truth, right? So it has obviously a super functional component. to it. But obviously, I also had a little fun on some of these, just for example, here with, let's say, for example, like in review, that you have this dashed pattern in the background or something that is just like playful things. But what I still wanted to get into is that, as I said, like this, if it's like a small feature, like a one-off thing, you could apply it directly here. But what this component can do as well is that you can lay out like bigger projects. So this is currently the hierarchy primary. I can put this to secondary as well and be like, okay, this is feature awesome. And this is part one, whatever, the foundation. And this has a status. So we actually apply it here. So let's say, for example, here the design is done and we have this section here. And within that section, we need some further structure and say, okay, for example, we have here first the flow. And then as a second part, for example, we have, I don't know, the used components or some questions that came up. So this is all the same component, and that makes it like super easy to use for our designers to quickly lay out a project and then be like, okay, so this is the first part. Now I'm gonna take this and say, okay, this is part two, whatever the details. And here,
The hygiene to this seems very structured. Like rather than just dumping your stuff here, I think by following this kind of template, if you were to jump in to the Figma file of one of your designers, you don't need much context because the organization has already been done. You don't need to like DM them or Slack and be like, what's going on here?
Exactly. Like that definitely is the goal here of this layout. The disclaimer, absolutely, this is not how we always used to work. We're absolutely currently in the process of just cleaning things up. We had a lot going on with redesigning the full product, and now we can finally take a breath and clean things up and bring it into a really nice structure. And this, I think, will help us a lot in getting there. And this is like just part one of that process. So you would go into this file and you would start by you're in progress or you're doing like your first explorations, you're getting there. And then once you're done, actually here, we're reflecting our process a little bit as well in the page list. So if, for example, I would be done, I have cleaned everything up. I don't know, I've made another iteration that is more cleaned up. I would say, okay, cleaned up. And when this is done and it's aligned, for example, with product managers and like basically within the team, everything is clear and aligned, then I would move this page up here to in review. And this is super nice. Like you can really go through the whole process of developing a new feature in this page sidebar, right? For example, now I would get feedback. I would, for example, get feedback from leadership, right? And other stakeholders that need to basically sign off on the solution. And once it's done and everything's clear, I move it up to ready for dev. And then once this has gone through basically it's within the sprint planning and everything is clear for developers, then it actually goes into in development and finally it will go into live. And this will help so much to clean up the whole process, right? Like I open up this file and right away I can see in the sidebar, oh, okay. So here in whatever, let's say, what do I have open here? Like our file editor. Okay, so we have a live version. Oh, apparently there's 2 projects that are currently in development. Or if I just switch, for example, here into this file, you also would see, okay, there's, for example, 2 experiments running currently, or 2 experiments that are currently in development. And once they're done, I would also move them into live because they stay experiments. And once they are conclusive, like we know what the result is of that experiment, then it would get a check mark. And then it is also basically a live version.
So rather than creating separate pages for each stage, you just have one Figma page that has the project, but that moves up in different stages. So it goes from in progress to review to ready for dev to development versus trying to create a separate page for each one and manage multiple links to share.
Yes. So basically, that is the idea. What the actual day to day will look like is that I would usually duplicate that page, or not duplicate, but create a new page, just pull out the stuff from my explorations, my previous explorations that that are cleaned up, that are the things I settled on. And this page, like once it's aligned with product management, once we are basically internally aligned as a team, then in the next step, I would then just move this one page through the process. But while it's still down here, like in progress, there's things happening. There's a lot going on. So for example, jumping into this file, like you see there's an initial release, there's some stuff in development, one thing that is waiting for development, one feature that is in review, and two things that are just past things we've been working on. And these don't get deleted, but they actually move down to our temporary archive. And it's called temporary archive because this is the stuff that is not being used, but it is still relevant to reference maybe in discussions. If we look through the file, if I, whatever, have a review with leadership or stakeholders, and I'm like, and we, as we've discussed back then, we had still these three options, and then we decided to go into this direction. And then I jumped back to the version where actually this archive used to be much bigger. Like there were, I think, I don't know, 6 pages in there, but these get pulled out at some point because otherwise, like the file isn't manageable anymore at some
But
point.
where do you move those files? So to keep the file lightweight, like some of the temporary archives, if it gets too big, where do you move them to?
We have also basically we have here product and website and design jams where we try stuff. And then we also have archives actually for each of them as well. So basically the duplicate. So what I would do is then move it here into the archive for product where, yeah, exactly. You can see here, this was the file we were referencing before that contains like all of these other earlier explorations that aren't necessary to look at anymore.
Okay. And then the Figma file only has the last 2 recent archives and everything else is just stored here. And then going to your file template, I like that there's some kind of design checklist going on. Can we zoom into that?
Yeah.
What's going on there?
This is like only the most important stuff, but also from discussions with developers, the stuff that's missed a lot, let's say in handoff to developers. I'm not going to prescribe the whole process to our designers. They're all capable and know how to approach their work, and they can have their different styles of how they arrive at a solution. But when it comes to the handoff, we need to be aligned, and there, are just certain things that just need to be checked off, right? So this is something that is part of that file where you can actually see, okay, did you check the edge cases? Are responsive edge cases visualized? Did you think our design is quite now after the redesign? Because most things scale easily between the web version and the mobile version. So it is this mobile first approach that we have. But in some cases, it isn't that easy. So in these cases, you actually have to visualize all of these edge cases and think through them. And this check mark helps me to, when I review the designs from my team, to be like, okay, you thought about this. Like you checked it off. I'm going to trust you that you also actually checked it.
Can you show an example of a file where you have the checklist and it's checked, but then it also has that example of one of these items?
Yeah, this is actually a really good example of what I've shown you before, like this full process of the multiple steps to get to the final product. Here you can actually see, okay, this is step 1. This is still what was the status quo of how the UI looked back then in step 1. And we broke it into multiple tickets, right? So we also use this Jira widget, which is super nice. I'm just going to open it really quickly, but I don't know what the information is in there, but you can see, okay, this is the ticket people are working on. And this is like one piece. And once this is shipped, okay, we can move on to step 2, where we actually, for example, redesigned the sidebar here instead of directly showing this editor function. And so basically, step by step, we actually resemble what the product evolves to, rather than just showing the final product, but actually how do we arrive step by step to the final product. And here actually it is actually checked out.
So the steps here, are they iterations or they're actually steps the user takes in the product? Are you using the step 1, 2 as like iteration 1 and 2? Does it mean that, or is it actually a sequential flow of how the user takes the steps?
I think I can even share this here. Yeah. This is basically how we structured, like approach it. Like you usually when you have such a big project like this one, you first go far, right? Like you visualize like what the end result should be, like what the vision for this feature should be. And then somehow you need to actually ship that. And you won't be able to just say, okay, we need, I don't know, 3 months to ship it and everything else is on hold. No, you have to break it apart into smaller chunks, as we called it here, pieces of ship. we 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 broke it up. For example, okay, there's the file viewer on the left, and there's the sidebar, and our AI creation, call to action, and the mobile solution, and like other parts that were all part of the full vision for that feature. And then we broke it apart into smaller chunks and actually planned out every single step. That's actually like you have to go this extra mile of like reverse engineering every step, right? Where you're like, okay, there's a lot between those, like where we started and where we ended. How do we visualize now every single small iteration? And there's not a lot of difference between those in some of these steps, but it is just the way how it was for us the easiest to visualize it for our developers and also for our stakeholders to understand the steps.
So going back to the Figma file that you have, I'm curious to see the way you're managing the different iterations in the file template that you had.
Yeah, the file template. So here, actually, as I showed before as an example, so how we would approach it would be that now you have this live version, you have this checkmark version that is basically representing the source of truth. And then if we were to create another iteration of that feature, the process would start again, right? Like we would come back here, create a new page, and then it would go through these first in progress, explorations, iterations. Anything that isn't necessary anymore gets dragged down to the archives. And then once it's ready, it goes through the process. And then finally, probably in the end, this will be marked in most cases as an experiment, which we test against. And then once we settled on this being like the new source of truth, like it won in all the tests, all the metrics are up, best case, and we are happy internally, then this one would replace what was before the source of truth. And this one would move down into the archive and probably stay there.
Got it. And what was that shortcut? Was it Raycast or something else you're using?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's Raycast. And I actually never finished their walkthrough. Sorry.
Oh, no, I haven't used Raycast. I've been meaning to use it, but I'm just curious to know, as a designer, how do you use Raycast? How does it help you speed up your productivity?
I would love to say that I'm already a Raycast super user. As my walkthrough shows, I'm not. Right now, it is a really good emoji picker for me. Apart from that, honestly, I'm not using it yet. I'm still using the normal Spotlight for most things just because I'm used to it. And I still need to internalize it and actually go through the walkthrough and learn what's possible, right? Because that's awesome. There's a color picker. Awesome. Look at this.
That emoji thing is a game changer because I cannot tell you how many tabs I've opened. I have to go and open up a new tab, need the finger down emoji, copy it, paste it in my post.
Horrible.
And you just like one click, you get it here.
Yeah, no, it's super comfortable to use. Really, really great product.
Love it. Amazing. So, and then let's quickly get like a idea of the design system
Okay.
for Study Smarter.
I have one last thing here
Yes.
inside in our file template that I wanted to show. Okay, I'm just gonna remove this stuff. So this is actually like the starting point, right? You create a duplicate of this file, you can start right away. You have all the things you need. You have your checklist, you have the first section to get started on a feature, and also basically this the starting point widget to directly add the tickets to your design, which is super nice and handy to jump there, see in which state it is within Jira, and collaborate. So this is super nice. Then the other thing we have in here is always that horrible to get FigJam connector. I don't know how many times I've had to just open up any other file to copy paste it into the file I'm working in. Now our designers just have one handy always. And this is actually a super nice widget for documenting anything in screens. So basically they have everything to get started, including, and this is something I like a lot, like this I'm a little proud of, is the sticker sheet here with just some product UI, where this actually is a component with the page layout. And the nice thing is that since the design work is probably just going to happen in here, I wanted to create a way for our designers to just quickly get like the basic layout where they're at. So what you can see here in this component is that I can choose, is it either desktop, is it tablets, where it jumps into the tablet design, or is it mobile breakpoint, which just adjusts the padding on the outside. But looking at this, actually, we have this design pattern of once you're in a detailed view of the product, it actually behaves similar to how like to multiple sheets being on top of another. So now we're on like level 1 of the UI, but I can also switch here to be on level 2. And now you
Oh,
actually
wow.
have this background layer. And the nice thing is that actually you can also now switch whatever content you want to have in the second level, but also what still is in the background in the first level. And if, for example, I would now hide like this second level UI, you would actually see the previous level in the background. And that helps
That's
you with when you're visualizing the flow, and maybe even you want to link this as a prototype, it would just work. Like you would have the previous screen as well, and then it can transition into the view you actually want to have in the front. That helps our designers to just get started really quickly and just say, okay, am I working on level 1 or level 2? Okay, cool. So if it's on level 1, nice, I'm going to do this, or level 2, it's this. And then I'm just going to break it, like detach the component, and then I can actually work in here and remove the stuff I don't need and change anything about whatever, like the page header, if we want that action bar or whatnot. So this is like a super nice starting point for people to get started. And this is why this is also part of the file template for designers.
This is amazing. So instead of starting at the blank canvas, designers on your team already have this like UI ready to go that they can iterate on.
Exactly. So because usually like we use super straightforward design patterns. Like we don't go super crazy. You can see it right away. We wanted to keep things super simple, super easy to quickly iterate and have clear design principles about how things look and feel and work. And yeah, that makes it super easy for our designers to just create a new screen.
Love it. And I'm curious to see how it works for the mobile as well. Like the different options. Is there also like layer
Yeah.
1 and 2?
Yeah, this is actually this is the same component. So this is all basically one layout component. Wait, let me create something that it doesn't look as bad. But okay, so this is one component called page layout, and it is either it's desktop or it's mobile. And also here I can go on level 2. And then it is hidden because we decided to actually have a full overlay to save some space, but the other level is still behind it.
What's the mobile grid you're following?
So this is like the default version we're designing at, like it's 1440 pixels. So here you can see how our grid works for the UI. You have at the top and the bottom, like the safe area, and on the sides here for the content area, the safe space as well, and then a 12-column grid. And then this actually works until 1200 pixels. And after that, the add sidebar moves into the content. Actually, at the size below 1200, the ads are removed from the side and move into the content area. Actually, this is also part of this component where I can just show the ads so they appear inside. And then actually the layout below 760, we basically just remove the background of the desktop UI. And this is how basically the mobile design appears, like the header. We're just reusing the gradient that is in the background before and using it like this. And here at 430, we're moving from a 24 pixel padding on the outsides to 16 pixels.
I love it because we just haven't covered mobile like grid design. So we're just curious to see how the breakpoints are working. And then now you've got, I think, 4 columns for the mobile design. Nice. Good to see that. Wow.
Yeah, exactly. So here actually on tablets, it's a 6-column design.
Okay. Hey, this is Jay. It means the world to me that you watched this video. If you want to unlock the AI design and growth design interviews with designers at some of the top companies in the world, then head on over to sneakpeek.design and subscribe to the newsletter.